Okay, so most of my focus today is on the actual pesticide regulation changes, a lot of label changes that are going on. So for those of you who are familiar with Charles Dickens, that's the person that wrote the Christmas Carol, the Ebenezer Scrooge, Bah Humbug, the Ghost of Christmas Past and all that. And he also wrote something called The Tale of Two Cities. So my approach to presentations is to try and keep it interesting. Talking about pesticides is a very dry subject, so I see what I can do to make it not so boring. So we have the tale of four pesticides, and I'm not going to read every screen to you. If you're familiar with this story, you will understand the connection. So book one is Chlorpyrifos. So Chlorpyrifos has been going through a number of changes. It was primarily used for vine mealybug. And there's a lovely photo of some vine mealybug. If anyone has had to battle an infestation of vine mealybug, then you know that it is a constant process and very difficult to eradicate entirely. So Chlorpyrifos became restricted in 2015, and then as a result of these restrictions and understanding more about the chemical and how it affects air quality, water quality, the use of it has decreased significantly. In fact, in Sonoma County, I don't believe we have any current use. So the restrictions with all chemicals that are under Department of Pesticide Regulation, there is constant evaluation about how does this chemical affect the air, the water, the neighbors, the children, who needs to be protected, and then when they realize that there is an active ingredient that has potential harm or greater potential harm than originally understood, they go through a rulemaking process. And this is a long process where, there is time for public comment. It has to be publicly put out there so that people have an opportunity to contribute to the opinions and the understandings of the how will this rule change affect the people who are not only using the product, but those who are neighbors of people using the product, everyone who is affected by use of the product. So after a long process of gathering information and evaluating, the Department of Pesticide Regulation then makes changes to the label regulations and to use restrictions. So as of January of 2019, Chlorpyrifos had some real stringent permit conditions. So some of these conditions are bans on all aerial applications. This product cannot be distributed or applied by air. There must be at least a 48-hour notice of intent, and that notice of intent must have a PCA recommendation. And the use is restricted to the list of critical uses. Vine mealybug on grape is part of those critical uses. Critical uses are not orchards and nursery stock. The other conditions, there's a 1/4-mile buffer zone during application and 24 hours after application. And this is from the perimeter of the application area. And there's, in addition to that 1/4-mile buffer zone, there's a 150-foot setback from all sensitive sites. So what is a sensitive site? Any place that is frequented by non-occupational bystanders. So anybody who could be going for a jog near your application area, that makes it a sensitive site. And if you take a look, buildings occupied by humans for residential or commercial purposes, property associated with. That means the parking lot for that building that is near your application site. The 150-foot setback includes that parking lot. What's not included are the agricultural buildings. So the barns, the sheds, those, as long as they're non-residential, those are not included in the prohibition. And then that quarter-mile buffer zone, again, that is from the perimeter of your application area. So no one can be within that quarter mile at all, except the person handling and applying. That means your neighbors need to give written confirmation that they and anyone that they are aware of that could be going into that area will stay out of the buffer zone. So those are really stringent regulations, and that's all leading up to eliminating chlorpyrifos entirely, because it's really hard to get everyone within a quarter mile to say that they're going to take off for a couple days. So all sales of chlorpyrifos stopped in February. As of the end of this month, it is no longer legal to even possess chlorpyrifos products. So until the end of this month, if you wish to use up the product that you have, it must comply with the current regulations, the setback, the buffer zone, and it can only be used for the critical use. So chlorpyrifos is going away. The second thing we're going to take a look at, paraquat. So paraquat has been around for quite some time, but there have been multiple deaths that have been related to and associated with paraquat. It became a restricted material in 1974, and the registrant added a safening agent, a scent, to prevent accidental ingestion. Most of the problems that have happened with paraquat have been with putting them into an illegal secondary container, putting a little bit into a drink container or into something that is not labeled, and then someone accidentally either ingests it or gets exposure on their skin. 1983, Science Digest, this was an article that was highlighted the dangers of paraquat. So the problem with this product is that it is highly toxic no matter how you are exposed. So most of the deaths were from accidental ingestion. And again, the majority of those had happened when product was put into a non-compliant container. But 3 of those deaths were just from contact with skin or eyes, and there have been many, many severe injuries. There is no known antidote for paraquat exposure, and it has been banned in many places throughout the world. So again, this went through that process of information gathering and public comment, and it's been under the rulemaking process. So the changes to the label began in 2016. There's additional warning materials that are required that highlight the toxicity. Paraquat can only be used by certified applicators. It cannot be used or handled by someone who's under the supervision of an applicator's license. The person handling it must have the license. And that licensed individual must have specialized training at least once every 3 years. And there's new packaging that is required so that the product cannot be accidentally put into improper containers. So the label changes, it has to highlight the toxicity and corrosiveness. And then this label even includes to be used by certified applicators only. This is a label from Australia, so that it also is pretty similar. Can kill if swallowed. The product is too hazardous to be used in the home garden. So all around the world, it's recognized that this is a dangerous product. And on the label for US, this is a gramoxone label. It indicates that certified applicator training is required. So this is actually a snip from a gramoxone label. And we do still have people in the area who use gramoxone regularly. So as of September of 2018, the old labeling could no longer be sold. But stuff that was already out there on the shelves could be sold and used up until the supplies are exhausted. So if you still have paraquat with old labeling, you can still use it, but you cannot find old label on store shelves anymore. So this is still undergoing changes. It is, there's no final decision yet. So the interim decision is, it involves a number of changes for paraquat. So no aerial application except for cotton desiccation. There's a maximum application rate specific to alfalfa, so that would be more towards Central Valley. It requires an enclosed cap if it is 80 acres or less. And there's a residential area drift buffer with a 7-day restricted entry interval for cotton desiccation and a 48-hour re-entry interval for everything else. And the label also must include spray drift management. So moving on to the next active ingredient, let's take a look at Carbaryl. So Carbaryl has been around for quite some time. It was introduced as brand name 7, widely used in agricultural settings, but commonly used in home settings. I remember when I was a kid, Mom would be out at the roses and she'd be sprinkling on this dust for the aphids. So I spent some time in a cloud of Carbaryl dust. So people who understand pesticides and are licensed to use them properly understand how to handle them safely, but most residential users don't know how to handle them safely. This is one thing that we've heard over and over again from licensed professionals. Why is it that we are so stringently regulated, but the homeowner can abuse things and not be told differently? Well, we finally have one product where the homeowner is now told differently, because many of the illness investigations with relation to Carbaryl had to do with children. So Carbaryl is no longer available for public sale. You cannot walk into a Home Depot or Tractor Supply or any other public offering and find 7 with the active ingredient of Carbaryl. As of August 1st, so this is very recent, it is illegal for any person without a license to possess or use Carbaryl products. So landscapers must have a license if they are using Carbaryl. So for our ag uses, it remains a restricted material, so that doesn't change. It's only now illegal for public possession. And then the last thing to take a look at is the 2nd generation rodenticides. So these 2nd generation, the anticoagulant rodenticides, this was just signed into law September 29th. I believe it takes effect in January. And these products are prohibited except for specific uses like public health or vector control. It's still, the wording is still being put out there, but these products are going to be very restricted. So anything that's an anticoagulant type of rodenticide, you want to check with your county agricultural commissioner's office whether or not you can continue using that. So with regard to these active ingredients, if you need to dispose of leftover product, you can obtain a temporary EPA ID number from the Department of Toxic Substance Control. It's an online thing. You put your information in, you get a 90-day EPA ID number so that within that 90 days, you can have a company come and pick up, or you can take it to your county hazardous waste disposal. If you have, I know Sonoma County has the household toxics drop off, but for businesses, you make an appointment. So you want to make sure, especially if you have any chlorpyrifos product, you want to get rid of that before the end of December. Yes, there will be a sequel. These processes of evaluating products and evaluating the effect that they have on the air and water and individuals, public, the types of injuries that happen, these are all constantly evaluated. So as products and active ingredients get on the radar as being a little more dangerous than previously understood, they will go undergo the same scrutiny and perhaps label changes or regulation changes. So the DPR website lists the products that are, undergoing evaluation. Soil fumigants right now are a conversation that's happening, but stay in touch with the DPR website and with your county ag commissioner's office. So going forward, a couple of things to keep in mind. If you have a restricted materials permit, you need to document why other non-restricted products are not sufficient. So when you have a permit renewal and you have restricted materials on your permit, there will be additional documentation in order to keep those restricted materials on your permit. So you want to talk to your county ag commissioner's office for more information about that. And then as far as the, and let's hold off on the questions for a moment, but as far as pollinator protection, I didn't add slides for that because for the last 2 years, I've been focusing on pollinator protection at many of my presentations. But there is a regulation that if you are using a product that is labeled as toxic to bees on a blossoming plant, that blossoming plant is not necessarily your crop. That blossoming plant could be weeds or hedgerow that are within the application area. So if you are applying a product that is labeled as toxic to bees to a blossoming plant, then prior to that application, you must run a bee check. So a bee check, you can either call your county ag commissioner's office or use bewarecalifornia.com to find out if within a mile of your application area, there are any registered beehives. And if there are, all you get is a yes or no. And if it's yes, those registered hive owners have a preferred method of contact. So pollinator protection is a new, it's not necessarily new. The regulations have been on the books since the 70s, but there's been a renewed interest in pollinator protection. So if you need assistance with a bee check or finding out how to use the online system, contact your county ag commissioner's office and they can help you with that. And I have no idea where we are in time. Any questions?
Beverly,
Yeah.
So the questions will be at the very end, and they will be fed to you by Aubrey.
Okay.
We're at 8:25.
Oh, I'm done early.
Okay, so then we'll need to take questions.
Alrighty, so the first question, you mentioned it, maybe you could go back to the slide on ways to dispose of Chlorpyrifos in existing inventory.
Yes. So you want to get an EPA ID number if you're going to have a company, well, either way, whether you take it to the dump or if you have a waste disposal company come and pick it up. So a hazardous waste company, oftentimes these are the folks that pick up your waste oils, yeah, that's most commonly, it's the folks that go around and pick up waste oils. They will also pick up other hazardous waste. So if you have an EPA ID number, they can come to your property and remove your hazardous waste. The other way is with your EPA ID number, you contact your local dump, find out if they have a toxic, household toxics or a toxic waste collection day, and most of them work by appointment.
Alrighty, thank you very much. The next question is, what are some of the brand names of products that contain Chlorpyrifos?
That's a good question. I want to say something like Lorsban, but I may be wrong with that. Because we always talk about the active ingredient. I'm sorry, I don't have the brand names in front of me.
That's all right. I'm sure that's something they could find somewhere else. And then for the EPA ID number, is that a state EPA or Fed EPA?
That is state. So it's the California Department of Toxic Substance Control. And so that is a state EPA ID number.
All right.
You can get a permanent one or a temporary, the 90-day, either one is free.
Perfect. Those are all the questions you have, Beverly.
All right.
Is there any other questions? We do have some extra time now. Is there any other questions for Beverly Hammond today?
There is a question that was just posted in the chat. It says, does anywhere in Sonoma County take out of date or illegal pesticides? And any idea on how much the cost is?
Yes, so that would be for Sonoma County, that is the dump at Meacham Road. And if you have your EPA ID number, you make an appointment to bring your hazardous materials for drop off. And there is a fee. I believe it starts at $25, but it is ranged based on quantity of product.
Okay, I think that's it for you. Oh, sorry, one more popped up.
No worries.
One popped up. Your lucky day. How do we dispose of treated wood stakes? Can we get a temporary EPA number or waiver?
The treated wood. I've always just taken that to the dump.
Okay.
It doesn't go in compost. It goes in the actual landfill.
All right. And then how can you dispose of triple rinsed pesticide containers besides collection days? Can they go in mainstream recycling?
You do not put them in the recycling. You put them in the dump, the actual garbage.
The garbage. Perfect.
Yes. Yeah, they have to go to landfill. They can't be recycled unless they're recycled through the specified recycle day.
Okay. And then we got a comment on Gramoxone is the only brand name that Elizabeth Garcia could find that has the
For paraquat? Yes, that is the one that is in California.
Okay. And then there's a question. It says, is the EPA number you mentioned the same as the restricted permit number?
No, it is not. Your restricted permit number is your, that's issued by the County Ag Commissioner's Office. And so your permit is the thing that allows you to purchase restricted materials, those that are listed on your permit. There are some folks who have, strychnine or zinc phosphide for rodent control. There are some that have 7 Carbaryl. So your restricted materials permit allows you to purchase that product and report that on your pesticide use reports. Your operator ID or permit that you get from your County Ag Commissioner's Office really only suits that purpose, is to allow you to purchase and report. Your EPA ID number is strictly the ID number issued and required by companies to collect waste from you, hazardous waste. So that EPA ID number is a state issued number, and that is, again, specific to your facility, but that is really just for things that would pose an environmental threat.
Alrighty. The next question is, how is DPR planning to regulate imidacloprid in grapes?
Imidacloprid?
Imidacloprid, yeah.
I have not read up on that anything that's recent for imidacloprid. I know that it is under discussion, but that'll be part of the sequel.
Alrighty. And then how much is paraquat used in Sonoma County now?
I don't have actual numbers as far as pounds of active ingredient, but I do the review each month of all the pesticide use reports that come in before I send them off to the state. I see gramoxone used probably 3 or 4 times a year by just 2 or 3 different facilities.
Okay, and then is it possible to dispose of unlabeled or damaged label pesticides using this EPA permit process?
Yes, yes. The same steps. You either take it up to the dump by appointment, or you have a company come and collect.
All right. Okay, one more here. With the new restrictions on second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, does that mean only current generations will be targeted with available materials?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'm not sure either. You could maybe read the question on your own in the Q&A box. He followed up with no secondary poisonings.
Right. They are reducing, strictly limiting the use of products that have secondary kill. So with these anticoagulant rodenticides, the rodent ingests it, and then if like a hawk or an owl or something picks up that rodent, then that other animal is also killed.
Okay, Beverly, thank you so much for your presentation today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. And if there are additional questions about some of these things later on, feel free to contact me at the Sonoma County Ag Department.
Thanks again.